All right, I'd like to call this meeting to order, and it is being streamed on Facebook Live again. I guess the highest rated Facebook Live streaming in history
Of the city of San Jose.
of the city of San Jose.
Yeah.
Maybe. I kind of got a little too lofty. Can we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Diab.
Present.
Councilmember Davis. Mayor Sam Licado.
Present.
Chair Chappie Jones.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Okay, we have a requested change to the agenda, moving item number D4, swapping that with item number D3. So they want to switch those. So can I get a...
So moved.
Second. All right, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All right, and so we're in B1 and B2, where there's a request to drop those two items. So if I can get a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, those items are dropped. No, nothing on the consent calendar. So we get to go right to D1, the Innovation Roadmap Update. So, Kip, take it away.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the committee, members of the general public. Kip Harkness, Deputy City Manager. We are, as a team, 2 years old now, so we're toddlers, and we've been learning a lot in those first 2 years. I want to step you through fairly quickly this first item on our roadmap update. So here before you is our approved innovation roadmap with our projects and the lines of work that we're doing. At your direction, we've been asked to expand and update this roadmap to take it from the innovation focus that it has to broaden it to include the full palette of smart cities work. So conceptually, and you'll see more detail in this in our manager's budget addendum number 8, I believe, that we've released on this. But the way that we're thinking about it is our current innovation roadmap is really focused primarily on this innovation as impact piece that you see in the middle, projects like My San Jose and autonomous vehicles. And what we'd like to do as we evolve is to expand the innovation roadmap to include more space for some of the experiments like the Facebook Live pilot and some of the small scale learnings that we can engage Silicon Valley with. At the same time, there is this core work around brilliant at the basics, things like our business tax system, our business process automation, and our permitting systems that we don't want to lose track of. So our thought is what we'll do is we'll make our IT roadmap more clearly prioritize that brilliant at the basics work. We'll have our innovation roadmap focus both on the innovation at impact and include more space for the small scale experimentation. And the sum of those two together will be our smart city roadmap. And so more and more of what we do as a city around innovation will come within the confines of that roadmap and the work of this committee. As I mentioned, we're kind of on year 2 here. We're toddlers, and what we've learned in that period of time is we've gone from a vision to the roadmap, and now we've begun to multiply that efforts. In year 4, 5, and beyond, we really see our task, as I said, expanding to that larger smart cities roadmap, making sure that connects back to the vision, and taking various strategies into implementation and going from pilot to scale. In particular, in the Roadmap 2.0, we expect to see a continuation of implementation of our broadband strategy, where we'll be bringing additional telco agreements to you, our data strategy on how we use data to inform decisions, Safe City with our police department, fire and emergency management, as well as our emerging IoT, Internet of Things, and digital services strategy. The digital services strategy you'll hear more about in this meeting. So at a very high level, we also realize that in order to be effective, particularly with the Internet of Things, we're going to need to invest and engage in security, privacy, data architecture and infrastructure, and a platform approach at scale and from a centralized position. And we will continue to do this in the way that we've begun, which is agile and iterative, building, measuring, and learning as we go. Now, core to all of this and any transformation effort is the capabilities of our people, process, and technology. So along with the individual projects or the individual strategies, we're going to see a citywide effort to make sure that our people are equipped with the skills that they need to be successful in this digital environment, and that we are recruiting and retaining the kind of highly skilled people who can make this vision a reality. Similarly, we will continue to work to transform our processes from paper, inconsistent, and in-person to streamlined, customer-focused ones that are efficient and effective at delivering the services that we need. And then third and following, making sure that the technology investments support both the process improvements and the people investments that we make. Back to today's innovation roadmap, this is where we last left our heroes when we updated you in April. And then if we do a rapid switch to June, you see that not much has changed. We've had a shift in city data-wide architecture that's gone from red to yellow. We have some investments for your consideration as part of the budget that will allow that to go from yellow toward green. But at the moment, we consider it yellow pending the direction from the City Council. All the other ones remain essentially in the same category that they were before. And you can see sort of our pattern from September to June of our shifts. And as I mentioned last time, we'd had a kind of a shift into a bit more yellow and red, which indicated that we had a lot of complexity and some issues that needed addressing. My good news version of that, again, is that we've caught most of those early and are seriously addressing the concerns that have been raised. So with that, I'm going to stop on this section and be happy to take any questions about the innovation roadmap or the evolution to the Smart Cities Roadmap 2.0.
Thanks, Kip. Do I have any questions from my colleagues? Mayor?
Thank you. Thanks, Councilmember. Can we go back just one slide, Kip, to the integrated permitting system? Can you remind me, I know we hit a big speed bump there, what we think we have to resolve and when we think we could resolve it?
Good question, Mr. Mayor. So I'll give a first high-level cut and then inviting Rosalind Huey, the Director of Planning, Building, Code Enforcement, to give a fuller picture. So we've recently had a health check, which we initiated and conducted with ourselves, and that health check allowed us to take an open, candid, and direct look at the functioning of the system and what the issues were. Bottom line, we did the health check because we had some serious delays in implementation, and we wanted to make sure we were on the right track. Top line result of that health check suggests that we've got a vendor partner and a team that we can be successful with, but we need to make serious and significant changes in the way that we prioritize the work and how we manage the work on a daily basis in order to be successful. With that, I'll let Rosalind add a bit more from the in-depth perspective.
Thank you, Kip. Rosalind Huey, Director of Planning, Building, and Code Enforcement. And just to add on to a little bit of that, so actually it was very helpful to kind of do this pause and do this health assessment to really monitor and check on where we are in this really highly complex and multi-component project. A couple of things that we know we're going to need to make some course correction. And so we're going to be working on these items in the next couple of months. First and foremost is really doing some work on our project management approach and our schedule to really shore up, make sure that we have the expertise in terms of managing the project and being able to reestablish a reasonable schedule that we can all adhere to. Also was noted just issues around status reporting and communication, and that's among the project managers with our subject matter experts, as well as the steering committee, and those are the directors who are monitoring the project as well. And then lastly, just our overall project approach and methodology. We're going to be taking a deeper dive, looking into that and making sure that we put the corrections in place to move the project forward. So we're going to be working on these items. Actually, we have 10 specific recommendations in order to get us back on track. We're going to be working these items over the next couple of months. And then at that point, we'll be at a place where we can provide a full update to the committee this fall.
Okay, and recognize there's a lot of complexity here. Does this mean if we think we can work this out, this becomes a yellow or it becomes a green?
Yeah, I would say yellow. You know, interestingly enough, one of the issues that was raised was status reporting and engagement and governance, and those are some of the initial changes that we'll be making. You know, what you don't want to do with status reporting is do what they call watermelon status reporting, where it's all green on the outside, but once you get into the reality of it, it's red. And so at this point, I'm kind of holding on the red. And then when we get these initial steps underway with the team and re-engaged, I think we can begin to transition it toward yellow at that point.
Thank you. Thanks.
I guess it also matters if it's seed or seedless, right? So, so did you have a?
Are we dropping that AnyCom pilot from this innovation roadmap? I mean, it's totally dead. So once it's dead, do we just take it off, or do we leave it on because we want some replacement for that?
Yeah, we're being a bit, we're still figuring out our rules on this. So essentially what we said is we hadn't given ourselves any criteria for taking it off. And since we're coming back with the new one, it'll be off when you see the next version in September, and you'll see the refreshed piece. And then as part of that, we will have some recommendations for more dynamically adjusting it. But we sort of realized, okay, that's there, but we wanted to hold it on until we did the refresh.
So it's kind of a placeholder for the controllers or something?
Yeah, what you'll see is essentially the LED streetlights will expand, and there are a couple of components that we'll talk about in more depth later of the LEDs, which includes both the LED conversion and then potential both connectivity and IoT and controller aspects. But yes, this will be the last time you'll see the AnyCom pilot on any of these slides.
Thank you.
I just have a quick question. When I look at the slide where you have the bringing at the basics, in my mind, bringing at the basics is kind of the core foundation of where we need to be, and having all of those as green. And so I just want to get your thoughts on if we're not, where we need to be at the basics, how can we look to go to the next phase in terms of innovation as impact?
That's a tough question. I might ask Rob to join me on the brilliant at the basics, but I think there's a certain truth to that, in that what we believe is that there are basic fundamental core investments we need to make in order to be successful. And I think that there is a bit of a Maslow's hierarchy to them, that we can't be truly innovative at scale until we have some of that basics down. The reality is a lot of the innovation at scale captures work that is underway. So the way that I would read that is we probably need to make sure we're directing the resources to those basics to make sure they become green, and prioritize those in terms of some of the fundamental changes. That would be how I would approach it. But I think it's a very tough question and a good one.
Rob, did you want to respond?
Just tagging along with that, we also have the IT strategic plan. So the Brilliant at the Basics part of the innovation roadmap are some key things that we're going to focus on at this level. The IT strategic plan also contains, which Council approved last year, a lot of those investments that get the junk out of our way, right? So if we have over 70% of our portfolio is over 10 years old in terms of our IT assets and software systems, and those are end of life, end of support. That's a lot of weight on the organization, that things aren't working the way they need to. But in the past year and a half, we've been able to replace the HRMS system, upgrade the payroll system, upgrade the budget system, or implement a new budget system, do the talent management system, do the revenue management system, treasury management system, utility billing system. So that gets us on platforms on which we now have something that's modern, so we can focus on the higher value stuff that really Council is focusing on with the community. And so the thing I would say about the Brilliant at the Basics is absolutely essential, and we have to be relentless about that, and those investments are being made by Council and executed by staff. But there are higher magnitude things that we have to focus on next, which is, I think, where we get pushed, and that allows us to be more responsive to the community. And that's only when that foundation is set will we be able to hit those levels of responsiveness that you guys are defining for us.
Yeah, and just to add one thing to clarify from my perspective is that I do use this, if you've got to make a decision on where you're putting an investment or where you're putting leadership time, the farther it is based on the pyramid, it often means the more attention that it requires, right? We just got, for example, if you look, some of the things that's not on here are core connectivity and functioning of an IT system. If there's an issue with that, we've just got to address it. But we do believe that we can do all of these in parallel and concurrently at this point with the level of maturity that we are. We just do need to keep the eye on the prize of brilliant at the basics.
Great. Thank you. Appreciate that. Okay, so if I can get a motion to accept D1. So moved. Second. Been moved and seconded. All in favor say aye. Aye. All right, we're on to D2. Oh, I'm sorry, Blair, you have a card. Come on down.
Hello, good afternoon. I noticed on your roadmap there isn't a space for privacy policy up yet. And in writing, as it's primary election time, it's time I realized that, you know, I've been thanking you and understanding that you're creating a surveillance and technology ordinance for the fall, November. I'm worried that Councilman Rocha, who sponsored the bill, will not be here at that time, much longer after that time. So I've tried to offer the idea of two meetings here at Smart City, perhaps in August and September, and then one in December, and to make a public process that I think would offer a lot more input. And I also just figured that it was time to really bring in the idea that hopefully we can start talking about this issue now and how to make it a more public subject between all of us and between yourselves as city government and yourselves as city government talking to us, the public, about privacy policy and public guideline processes. And, you know, is there a way that you can start to just introduce that level of conversation? I hope this can be a time to do this. And when we come back after the summer break in August, I hope you can be prepared for it to do this. The privacy policy should be up there. I mean, it's a very exciting and important work, and you guys are really, really slow. And but I mean, I thank you, and I mean, a lot for all you're doing. But you do tend to drag your feet, and hopefully my exuberance can be of help to, you know, that we can find ways to. You know, just begin the dialogue process and make it an accessible process to talk about between all of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Blair, and also I like the new look with the hat. It's pretty good. Okay, we're on to D2, LED streetlight conversion update.
Again, Kip Harkness, Deputy City Manager. As you all know, we have been pioneers in LED replacement and use of LED technology in street lighting. And the completion of our retrofit of our streetlights to LED technology is a long-standing goal. It serves a diverse number of interests, from public safety to energy efficiency, and is in line with our Climate Smart San Jose plan. We've also realized that it will play a foundational role potentially in the development of IoT, Internet of Things, connectivity platform using smart controllers, sensors, and devices for a range of potential use cases, from smart irrigation in parks to on-street parking. What we'd like to do is I'd like to introduce Kevin O'Connor with our Department of Transportation and Keshav Gupta, who will take you through a readout around our analysis of potential for LED streetlight conversion.
Thank you, Kip, and good afternoon. My name is Kevin O'Connor. I'm Assistant Director of Transportation. Let's get started by reminding ourselves where we are in terms of LED conversions throughout the city. We have about 64,400 streetlights in the city. About 26,000 of them have already been converted to LED, and another 1,700 or so are planned for conversion in the next 18 months, meaning that we have about 36,700 lights which are candidates for future conversion. An interesting fact about the non-LED lights is that most of them, about 29,600, are low-pressure sodium lights. There are those yellow lights that we love throughout our city, which are already relatively energy efficient. So converting them to LED becomes less attractive than other agencies have achieved in terms of cost efficiency and energy savings. This map here provides an overview of the areas that have been converted and not converted thus far. The areas in green are existing LED streetlights. The areas in yellow are lights to be converted, and the blue area, primarily in the downtown, are lights that are planned for conversion. So the fact that we have 36,700 lights that still need to be converted isn't because we haven't been trying. You're all aware that in 2015, we issued an LED RFP called the Innovative Streetlight Replacement RFP that was really designed to see if we can convert our streetlights at no cost in exchange for use of city assets or valuable infrastructure that we have. In June, we were directed by the City Council at that time to declare the winner of the RFP, Siemens, and pursue a negotiation with them for a one-year pilot project of about 1,000 lights with their partner, Anycom. We negotiated with Anycom for about 7 months in good faith, and unfortunately, we're not able to reach an agreement, and in February, we terminated those negotiations, essentially ending the RFP process. Since then, over the last 4 months, we've done a variety of work to really recalibrate ourselves and understand where we go next with conversions, and that's really why we're here today. So some of the steps that we've taken since the conclusion of the RFP process includes benchmarking with peer cities to understand what they are doing in terms of LED conversions. We found that many peer cities have converted or are converting LED streetlights at scale, but none of them are really fully deploying smart controllers as part of their conversion. Cities like San Diego and LA are doing limited smart controller deployment, and other cities are considering going back around to retrofit their existing LEDs with smart units. In terms of funding, cities are using a mixture of options, some from self-funding to geo-bonds to various financing models that take advantage of energy cost savings and utility rebates. As an example, New York City self-funded a streetlight conversion project and reinvested O&M savings to ultimately convert 250,000 streetlights. Boston converted 42,000 lamps using a general obligation bond and rebates from their utility company. We also updated our cost estimates for converting LED lights, looking at the most recent fixture and controller costs. We also met with a couple of companies who provide smart controllers to understand where that industry is going and what solutions their products provide. I'll discuss more about smart controllers in a minute. And as part of our broadband strategy, in the latest negotiation with small cell providers, we realized that these companies are generally valuing the cost of LED conversion much higher than we are, in some cases 3 times higher than we are. So there may be limited opportunity to take advantage of that value exchange. And lastly, we identified 3 conversion options that were warranted for further exploration and consideration, which is again why we're here today. So these are the 3 options that we've identified and that we're looking for your feedback on for converting our remaining non-LED street lights to LED lights. Option 1 would use a rolling in-house deployment model whereby we would convert the LED fixtures with basic on and off controller units. The conversion would occur as existing lights burn out and would be done by our in-house maintenance crews. We anticipate that this would take about 7 years to complete at a cost of $16.5 million. Option 2 would also convert the lights with basic light controllers as they burn out, but would supplement that effort with additional contractual crews to convert lights in a proactive area-based approach. That project would take about 4 years to complete at a total cost of $17.6 million. And option 3 would result in conversion of LED streetlights with a complete installation and upgrade for all lights to new technology smart controllers. Installing smart controllers on all of these lights requires an additional $12.2 million for a total cost of $30.2 million. I should note that the time frame for completing each option would start once project funding is secured. And we recognize for several reasons that we may want to get started sooner than that in order to move up the actual date of complete conversion. So one idea is to consider identifying gap funding that would initiate all the planning, engineering, procurement, and in some cases conversion work ahead of securing that money. The purpose of bringing this item to you today is not to say here is the solution, but to really get your feedback and your thoughts about these options and help us identify a approach to complete. And to help us do that, we've identified 4 objectives that the streetlight conversion project would hopefully achieve, and we're looking for your feedback on the relative and individual importance of each. I'll ask that as we move through them, through the presentation and your questions, you consider these objectives. They include speeding up the overall time of full conversion, reducing the cost of conversion, establishing a smart city foundation, and minimizing the number of trips to the streetlight poles. One of the important things to recognize up front is that there is currently no identified funding for LED conversions. The potential sources are not a mystery. They include the general fund and the capital improvement program, both of which are challenged with many priorities and demands on those limited funding sources. There is, of course, the general obligation bond option. As you know, the council is exploring a bond measure that would fund a variety of infrastructure and public safety needs. LED conversions could certainly be a component of a bond program that allows us to achieve any option, including option 3 with smart controllers. There are also various other financing options available, but all add to the cost of conversion and reduce the city's return on investment by $2 to $6 million or more, depending on the terms of the financing. There are additional considerations that I think we need to consider. Things that we've learned recently and that we've known for some time. The city's public streetlights policy and the adopted public streetlight design guide call for the implementation of adaptive lighting to make use of advanced monitoring and control systems. The policy and design guide also established the practice of dimming streetlights during late night and early morning hours to further reduce energy consumption and protect the sky from light pollution. Unfortunately, the implementation and installation of LED streetlights with smart controllers increases the cost of conversion and further diminishes the return on investment. In terms of cost, the cost of LED fixtures has dropped by about 20% since the RFP ended, and manufacturers' rated life expectancy of the fixtures has increased from 15 years to about 24 years. This combination has positively impacted the cost of conversion and the return on investment. In late 2017, the city received notification that new orders for the low-pressure sodium replacement lamps and fixtures will no longer be accepted after July of 2019, and the production of these products will cease in 2020. We might need to pre-order and purchase in advance any replacement lamps for lights that burn out and aren't planned for conversion to LED before then. Regarding our existing smart controller, the evolution of streetlight controls and their integration with future smart city and Internet of Things applications is accelerating, with several promising products hitting the market. Conversely, the city's current streetlight control system, while cutting edge at the time of its adoption 6 years ago, is technically outdated and should not be expanded as part of a future conversion project. Consideration should also be given to the upgrade the controllers and existing LED streetlights as part of a comprehensive conversion plan. Lastly, staff recently received notice that PG&E will be terminating its LED streetlight conversion rebate program at the end of this year. No new applications will be accepted after December 31st, 2018. We had previously anticipated receiving about $1.5 million in rebate funding for LED conversions. So a major consideration for converting to LED streetlights is the type of controller that we deploy. There are various options or types of controllers, from the basic dumb controller that simply turns the light on and off as the sun rises and falls, to very smart controllers with high levels of lighting control and IoT connectivity. What we have now on our non-LED lights is the basic dumb photocell controller at the bottom of that functionality scale. Our existing LED streetlights with smart controllers, They provide basic lighting control, kind of that second green dot on that functionality scale. With these controllers, we're able to control our lights remotely, turn them on and off, program dimming, and receive reports regarding their status and their performance. The next level up would be enhanced lighting controllers that increase the degree of control over light. They allow for strobing, color tuning, and motion detection. And then there is the advanced lighting controllers that provide enhanced lighting control as well as smart city capabilities such as cameras, noise sensing, Wi-Fi, and other network connectivity capabilities. It is these controllers that really establish the foundation for a smart city and IoT platform. So the benefits of moving up the functionality scale for smart controllers include incremental savings on energy through dimming, improved operations and maintenance effectiveness through light stats reporting, more efficient and remote diagnostics, and energy usage reporting. There are qualitative benefits that improve public safety and the experience our residents have as a result of lighting, like strobing lights to inform and direct the public during emergency events, and dimming to reduce light pollution. And as I've stated previously, the smart controllers can also serve as a smart city foundation for our Internet of Things connectivity layer. On that note, the smart controllers can provide a connectivity layer for various IoT sensor applications. Some examples include flood monitoring sensors or flashing lights for public safety uses. For mobility, they can aid in transportation data collection and traffic management, as well as provide traffic and parking information to the public. We also have irrigation sensors in many of the city's parks that are not interconnected or on a single management platform. Smart controllers could provide that connectivity layer to allow for better overall water management. And finally, there are use cases for waste collection, air quality monitoring, and other environmental programs. It's important, though, to understand that we have not factored these efficiencies and these improvements in our overall return on investment calculations. So with all those considerations, let's review the options that we've identified. There is option one that would replace the lights as they burn out with basic LED fixtures over a 7-year period at $16.5 million. Option two would retrofit to basic LED fixtures over a 4-year period at a cost of $17.6 million. And option three would result in all of our lights being LED with the latest smart city controller over a 4-year period for $30.2 million. Finally, let's look at how these options stack up against the objectives we defined for our conversion project. The rating legend at the bottom of the slide describes how this rating systems work. This rating system works. White or empty circle means that the option has the least impact on the objective, while filled or black circles have the greatest impact. So starting with speeding up the full time of conversion, option one would take 7 years, with options 2 and 3 taking 4 years to complete once the project is funded. But with funding uncertain, we can speed up the project by providing gap funding to get started on the planning, engineering, procurement, and conversion process by up to 6 to 12 months. Option two with gap funding is the fastest way to go and could be done by December of 2022. For the cost of conversion, option one would cost $16.5 million, option two $17.6, and option three $30.2. One important thing to note, however, is that all of these options utilize in-house staff for some or all of the conversion work. We believe that there is a cost savings associated with this method, but more importantly is that we can utilize the resources already allocated for maintenance to convert the non-LED lights rather than repairing them as they burn out. For option one, that means we would only need $9 million in new money for conversion. Option two would require $12.9 million in new money, while option three would require $26.4 million in new money, which is why option one gets the nod here. For establishing a smart city foundation, it's pretty clear that without smart controllers, neither option one or two are the answer. Option three is clearly the choice. And lastly, in terms of reducing trips to the streetlight poles, option three is the only option that would have us convert the LED light and install a smart controller at the same time. Options one and two would require repeat trips in the future to install those smart controllers. So with that, moving forward, next steps and where we go from here, we certainly want to incorporate the feedback that we received today from the committee as we zero in on an option. From there, we need to perform much more detailed analysis and exploration around the financing and funding options and land on a solution there. We also need further project planning and scheduling and secure the resources needed to deliver these projects. And lastly, we want to take advantage of the latest LED technology, so we're going to update our specifications for LED fixtures. And with that, I will turn it over back to Kip.
I think that's very well said, Kevin, and we'll actually close there and take any questions that you might have and any guidance that you might provide as we move forward with this.
Okay, so start with Deb. Councilmember Davis.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. I have a couple of questions as I'm thinking through this. The current streetlight controllers are getting technically outdated, stuck in my head. We did those 6 years ago. If it's going to take us 4 years and we choose tech now, 4 years to even get it all the way implemented under options 2 and 3, or under option 3, I guess, if we use the smart controllers, does that mean we get 2 years of useful life out of those last installs, and then we've got to go and do this all over again? I mean, how fast is the smart controller market moving? Do we want to dip our toe in now because we did that and it sounds like it's maybe not the best?
Yeah. So maybe I can start by just describing what I mean by technically outdated and what our current controllers could do and not do. Then Kip can add kind of on the risk of innovation. So we were the first city across the country to adopt a smart controller technology and install smart streetlights in our city. We really pushed the industry in doing that, and of course, that comes with risk. But the controllers now still do basic light functions. We can remotely turn them on and off. We can program dimming. We can receive reporting on their status and run performance reports. We're piloting with PG&E to use those controllers to report energy usage for billing purposes. So there is a value. They're working. Okay. They're not failing. They're not the greatest. We are having, technical challenges with them. Occasionally they fail and we have to figure it out and fix them. But they're not going to die in the next year or two. They're going to be functional. I think what we realize is that the technical benefits, the lighting benefits, and then probably most importantly, the connectivity layer that new smart controllers offer is much greater than where we are today. The controllers we have today will not provide any functionality beyond what they do. Control the light. They will not enable any other connectivity or smart cities applications.
Yes, Councilmember, what I would add is there is a bit of an iPhone problem with this, right? There's some of it is just FOMO, fear of missing out, right? I've got my 7 and my 10, and there will be better things that will come along, and we will want those up on poles. I think the question is, if we buy the 7, how long is it going to last us, and what functionality is it going to need, right? And what our determination at this point is that the technologies and the capabilities and the markets have significantly matured around streetlight controllers. Again, as Kevin indicated, we were very much the pioneers in this, and we reap the benefits and bear the consequences. With this, we'll be more of a fast follower and be able to select equipment that works based on some specifications that we need. Particularly what we know now is we're going to continue to live in a heterogeneous environment where there are lots of different ways of connecting and lots of different types of sensors. So anything that we purchase needs to operate in that environment. And we want the technology, if possible, to be modular. And this is one of the realizations that was prompted by some of our recent learning around the IoT strategy. So, for example, if you pay attention to sensors, the price on sensors is just plummeting, and the ability of what sensors can do at very low cost is rapidly increasing. We'll want to be able to plug in and plug out sensors as they change in this network, and to respect the privacy of our citizens and the changes, different needs of different neighborhoods. We're not going to want to have the same every sensor everywhere in an IoT network in every neighborhood. So we're going to want to be able to have some cameras to do surveillance in a crowded downtown area. We're going to want to have some analytic ability to look at on and off street parking in some areas, just connectivity for the smart controllers in the park, Wi-Fi here and something else there. And so we're going to need to be able to kind of plug and play with these various sensors. So what we'll look for when we put the specifications together is make sure that the equipment that we get will allow us to lock us in at a base tech, but allow that tech to evolve over a reasonable period of time. And so we'll shoot for something that gives us a 10-year time horizon and a return on investment that makes sense. And yes, I absolutely guarantee at the end of that time we'll have fear of missing out, but our hope is that we can get a long enough run that makes economic sense and allows us to use and evolve that technology as we go.
So you're factoring in basically like a 10-year lifespan is kind of your thought on those, so that we know what the maintenance costs are going to be for replacing or going in and swapping out sensors.
Yeah, 10 years is a little bit of me pulling it out of the air. I think what we'll
Sure.
look at is we'll also distinguish between the LED itself, which is now up to about 24 years of lifespan, and that should be able to stay through multiple sensors, the smart controller and connectivity piece, and then any additional things that get plugged in. So each of those, we might have a different life range on them. The longest one we'd want would be the LED. The next longest one is the basic core controller. And then after that, we'd expect them to be moving a little bit faster. But again, to the extent that we can pull them out and plug them in without having to replace everything, we're in a slightly better situation.
Right.
Also, one of the evolutions that we've seen is the evolution of edge computing or fog computing. And as you know, this is the notion of putting more of the capability at the edge or in the device. And so, for example, now you'll see essentially microprocessors in these devices, which once you have connectivity, you can reprogram remotely and they can do the work. So a lot of the upgrading won't necessarily be a hardware upgrade,
Physical.
it'll be a software upgrade and an update, and you can flash new firmware in or you can flash new code in.
Great. And so if we go to option 3, do we convert the poles that already have controllers now last?
Yes, in fact, that's a significant amount of the cost, because we not only do the 29,600 that are yet to be converted, we go back to the 26,000 that are converted and retrofit them so that we're on a single platform and a single system.
Okay. And you talked a little bit about the 24 years of the lifespan for the LEDs themselves. Do we get a warranty on that? For like, what's the warranty for?
So
the
current
LEDs.
current warranty on most LED fixtures is 10 years, and that's full warranty. They don't provide a warranty for the full 24 years, but in the production process and in the manufacturing of the LED fixtures themselves, there are standards that they follow that are to a design and performance standard of 24 years. So they're building to a standard where they're predicting that life expectancy to reach that point. They won't warrant the product for 24 years. They'll replace it after before 10.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then the PG&E program that is terminating at the end of the year, is there any way? Obviously, option 1, we're not going to be able to take advantage of that. Is there any way, or what are your guys' thoughts about how we could take advantage of that? Because that's leaving isn't it $1.5 million on the table if we don't move quickly?
Yeah. Well, the current program requires that the lights be installed, purchased, installed, operating to receive the warranty. So it's probably virtually impossible for us to expect that we're going to get 36,000 lights converted before the end of the year. With that said, there's always negotiations that we might have with PG&E to see if there's any flexibility in what we might do. But the notice we've received from PG&E is that it is ending at the end of the year.
So it's not if we have a contract in hand
Nope,
by the end of
nope.
the year
It's
to get them going.
installation of the
It's
light.
completion.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, so that factors in the speeding up the time, right?
Yeah.
I guess my initial thought, since you asked for feedback, my initial thought is that I think it's important to do it sooner than the 7-year sort of replacement as things burn out. I know we've kind of been doing that already, which is good. But my residents are chomping at the bit for the LEDs. Then when they get them, some of them have issues with it because it's just a different kind of light, right? So it takes a little getting used to.
And that's actually one of the things that we can change with the more advanced lighting controls. You can change the tone, and so that blue light that keeps people up a little bit or interferes with the sleep cycle, you can phase that out, just like your iPhone now does that with you, just as an example.
Yeah, and I think that's definitely an advantage of the controllers, but the controllers are so much more. If we don't get the general obligation bond money, I would rather just get the lights up, even if we can't afford the controllers right now, because I think I heard from you, if we have the LEDs up, we can put the controllers on at any time, right?
Correct.
So we could phase that however we wanted to. And you could have maybe we have a different timeline for implementation for that.
Right.
And phase that in over however many years in addition. So that's kind of what I was thinking. I do like the fewer trips to polls just because when they're working on the polls, they'll block off part of the street, and that gets to be a problem. Then you got to deal with garbage. When you're in the residential areas, you got to deal with garbage days and kind of getting around all that stuff at the same time. But I think we have to think more concretely in terms of dollars than prioritizing that fewer trips. That's hard for me as an economist to say that we can't prioritize the efficiency, but I think we got to prioritize the dollars.
Thank you.
Thanks. Really appreciate the questions and the answers here. Can we go back to, I think it was the first slide, the map? The gaps, I mean, I knew we had a geographic basis for picking the spots where we'd go with the LEDs, generally in the south and the east of our city. But you got gaps of yellow in there, and then you've got pieces of green in other parts of the city. Could you explain a little bit about sort of the incongruous parts of the map?
Yeah. So one of our kind of fundamental principles in the LED conversions was safety. And we installed, to the extent possible, LED lights on our major arterials, particularly those that are part of our safety priority corridors and Vision Zero. So that's what you're seeing, some of that there, Saratoga, probably Blossom Hill, other roads that are where we've had, traffic safety concerns. And then the additional thing was, in feedback with PD was where are we having public safety concerns with crime and other unwanted activity. So we looked to maximize installations in those areas where we could as well.
Okay. And the blue is what's underway right now?
The blue is underway right now.
So
It's a
that's
project.
entire downtown, basically?
Yes.
And, okay. I actually wasn't aware of that. I haven't seen, are there trucks out there right
We're
now?
we're not converting at this point. We're still putting together the project, yes.
Okay,
Yeah,
cool.
so it's with funding through our parking fund, and we'll be converting all the high-pressure sodium lights that are downtown to LED.
Great, you anticipated my question. So those 3,800 will go away?
I'm sorry?
The 3,800 high-pressure sodium, that means?
Not completely. Many of them will,
Okay,
but not completely. There are, I think, some other scattered high-pressure sodium, but the majority of those downtown are high-pressure sodium lights.
got it. So as we look at the green that's there now, just to understand sort of how dumb or smart those controllers are, you described the functionality, I think, pretty well, Kevin. You have the mindset that if we go for option 3, sort of the full Monty, does that actually get us to go back and make all those controllers smart?
It does.
All right.
It does. It moves them up that functionality scale from where they are now, which is the second dot from the bottom, basic lighting control, dimming, lighting connectivity, to the advanced lighting control option, assuming that's where we go.
Right.
Yeah.
And when we were having these conversations and negotiations with companies about the value exchange of LEDs and what free stuff we could get and all that, what you said, Kip, was that we consistently found they were sort of tripling the cost or the value that we had estimated. So my question would be, are we sure that we have our value exchange right?
Well, so we've estimated the cost of converting a light with a smart controller around $500. That's, rough numbers. That's what we've built into our model. We think that's pretty conservative. And we're seeing companies, when they're talking about the value of converting an LED light as part of a telco project, in some cases 3 times higher than that. We think that's way out of line. Some would say, if they compare our cost to what maybe other cities are doing, that maybe we're high. I think we're just being realistic and conservative in our budgeting and feel like $500 is a pretty good estimate.
Yeah. Okay. And it's based on our own experience, so we're
Yes.
okay with it.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then this question about the modular approach, Kip, that you raised, I wanted to know if we could take it one step back. I know there's a lot of labor cost, obviously, in going up and down a pole, and you'd like to touch the pole once, not multiple times. But had we considered the possibility that we go with the Chevy option of simply doing the conversion in the hope that there's some technology, a modular technology essentially that enables us to convert a dumb to a smart controller?
Yeah, that is possible. And in essence, in some ways, option 1 or 2 are both of those, which
Okay.
is go ahead and move forward with the conversion, not necessarily saying never go to a smart city platform, but decouple the conversion of the LEDs from the platform. There's a bit of redundant and duplicate costs.
Sure.
But a photo cell is not even pennies anymore, and wiring that into a light is beyond trivial. So a light that turns itself on and off with certain light levels is very basic, and the ability to go back in and retrofit is quite possible. So
Yeah.
yes.
And I'm just guessing I'm just wondering if any companies have figured out how you could essentially set yourself up for that sort of modular conversion by enabling the technology to be installed without having to climb the pole the second time. In other words, put the light up, you put some fixtures there ready to plug into. I'm not sure. This may be more cost and more trouble than it's worth. And then somebody can walk to the base of the pole and install whatever's necessary to really make it smart.
Yeah, part of the advantage of the height of the pole and putting the stuff up top is actually this combination of safety and the perspective that you get. So from a safety standpoint, it's really hard for somebody to screw with something that's that far up.
Right.
And then from a sensor's perspective, if I am looking or I'm trying to be connected, it's much better to be high.
Right.
So generally speaking, obviously the microprocessing could go at the base other than the safety reason, but generally speaking, there's an advantage to having that stuff up there on top of the light fixture itself.
Okay, I'll let go of that delusion then.
And just, Mr. Mayor, I think everybody understands this, but just in case they don't, they are fairly modular. I mean, we're talking about a little plug-in cap. So it does require you go up to the light with some sort of boom truck, but it literally is one twist of taking something off and a twist of another thing, and you've got a smart capability that quickly. So it's not an extensive wiring process.
Right. But you need the equipment and you need to have somebody up there. Yeah.
You do. I just make sure that people understood the modular nature of that.
So I'm sure that you explained this somehow already, and I might have just missed the way, but the payback period at this point, given what we know about the cost of LEDs and all that, do we have a clear sense of that just on the straight LED without the controller?
Yeah, we're looking at about 15 years.
Oh, it's that long?
Yeah.
And that's because our low pressure sodium are already cost saving.
Yeah.
And so the bond financing, that would just be based on general fund savings. Is that period too long for Julia to say we can go issue bonds and not have to?
Yeah, we get into a negative return on investment once we start financing. We do not make money over the long term, over the life of a LED fixture, once we introduce financing and debt service.
And I think the thing that's changed, though, is that, to a certain extent, we no longer have a choice, right? So the technology that we've been relying on, while highly efficient and effective at delivering the service, simply will not exist anymore. And so I think part of the advantage of where we are, though not necessarily in a particularly helpful way, is that we're going to have to do this at some point anyway now. This is no longer do we want to, it's when we will.
Yeah, sometimes it's good to be pushed off the cliff.
Right.
So did I hear you correctly in response to Councilmember Davis's question? PG&E rebates are now out of the question because we have to have something installed. So that's not going to happen. Is that right?
Yeah, that's what PG&E has informed us. Yeah.
Okay. And in a happy world, maybe with San Jose Clean Energy up and running, rebates will abound and we'll be swimming in cash.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So do we get those rebates at least for the downtown conversions?
Again, yes. I got a yes.
Okay, we'll take
have
it.
those-
That's all great. And here's another question which will not help us answer the question you're trying to get at, but I'm just kind of curious. Is there, with really smart controllers and everything else here, and dimming and all that, is there opportunity for color and creativity so you can have blue lights when there are garage sales and disco lights when there's a block party and things like that?
Yeah, you absolutely can. White LED is actually composed of three different colors within it. And so basically the old school was just to turn them all at equal power levels. You can control the power level going into each LED, and that can give you the absolute full color palette of light that you can program and synchronize with music if you want to. The technology we saw on Sonic Runway is basic standard LED technology, and while I don't necessarily think people are going to want sonic street walks, that is a possibility of what the technology can do once you're fully controlled in a relatively trivial way. Those streetlights aren't necessarily tuned for disco, so I might be getting ahead of myself on the technology, but in terms of the capability, that is something that's there.
Groovy. I know it may not be groovy enough for $30 million, but it's pretty cool. So, I certainly would like to see how we can get all the way to option 3. I know we're in ongoing conversations in the next few weeks about what we might do with the capital bond measure, and this certainly seems to be relevant to a whole lot of things we're trying to accomplish around improving public safety, because I can tell you as a DA, witness identifications were a whole lot better when we had white light rather than yellow light, and people feel a lot safer in their own neighborhoods because they can actually see what's going on, and on and on, and it certainly will save us money in the long run. So there's a lot of reasons why we could justify to voters and our residents who might be paying for these bonds why we'd include that. But anyway, I look forward to conversation and creative thinking in the weeks ahead.
And Mr. Mayor, just back on the colored lighting, I got a little excited about the disco possibilities, but more pragmatically, some of the use cases around this are to create, in emergency situations, to be clear on where evacuation paths are, where hazardous areas aren't, where homes that maybe haven't been checked need to be examined, blinking colors, green is good, follow the green lights out of the city. That kind of thing becomes possible with this ability to do the highly adaptive lighting. So no sonic street lights perhaps, but there are emergency management uses which we would think would be quite useful in the event of a number of different disasters we might face.
I agree. I was just thinking, off the top of my head, if you could identify where people with physical disabilities live in flood-prone areas, for example, and you had lights that would go on at that moment, boy, wouldn't that be fantastic, so we could get in there and help them. Anyway, thank you, Kip. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mayor. Johnny?
Thank you, Kip. You're eminently quotable. FOMO? All right. I'm going to stick with your FOMO theme. And, like Dev said, today you could dim the lights and change the colors. Tomorrow, as we talked about, I guess, before I got here, you may be able to make phone calls from the same controller and have cameras hooked up to it, and. So I'm a little hesitant of buying in, and I think Councilmember Davis actually, it didn't happen 6 years ago. It was only 3 years ago when this thing passed, so the technology has become obsolete in half the time you thought it did. And so that's why I hesitate. I remember it was the greatest thing since sliced bread, but I actually mainly voted for that because we were changing our air conditioning systems and we were going to get a lot better deal on energy saving some of our obsolete air conditioners and heaters. That's where I thought we were going to save money on that program. So when I think about this, I think about, yes, we could buy in this extra $12 million plus to do the new fancy stuff, or we might be able to go and wait for, say, Verizon, who wants to change 2,000 potential poles, and they might require some fancy controller that we might be able to get for free. And what are your thoughts on that potential?
Yeah, we've definitely looked at the potential within the telco negotiations and the telco work of adding the smart city piece in. It's something we're very intentional about. Bottom line, I don't think it gets us everything that we would want or gets us all the way across the board, but there are definitely things that AT&T, Verizon, and other of the telecommunications players could provide as they're doing their work on small cells that enhance our ability to both convert the LEDs as we go and also to build some of that smart city layer. Part of the complexity of this, though, is in order for it to meet its objectives, we need some consistency, or we need some connectivity across the city that allows us to be able to not have to say, oh, well, I can do some stuff here, but I can't do some stuff here. But the bottom line answer is we think there is potential there, and in future agreements, as we conclude them with the telcos, if we've been able to find that kind of value trading, we'll bring that back for your consideration. So we think that might reduce some of these needs. We don't think it'll cover 100% of them.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad we're thinking along the same lines. Good to know that I actually think a little along the same lines that you do, that you're so far ahead of us.
Not as quotable, though.
Definitely not as quotable. Is the cost that you inputted into this, the 17 million, if we go back to that slide that had 16 point whatever and 17 point whatever. Yeah, that one. So the cost that we were talking about, like in option number 2, does that calculate in, we must set aside some amount of dollars every year in our budget to replace streetlights, do we not?
Yes, we do.
And is this price net of the replacement costs?
Yeah. Great question. So I did touch on that, but not very clearly. So this is the total cost of conversion. When we factor in the fact that we, in this deployment model where we're using in-house maintenance crews to replace burned out lights with LED fixtures, we're already paying for that cost. They'd either repair the light or they'd replace it.
Yes.
That comes with additional costs because they have to buy fixtures and it takes a little longer. But when you factor in those costs that we're already paying for now, we see a reduction in the total amount of money for each of these options. So the $16.5 million goes down to $9 million of new money we need. So we already are investing $7.5 million over that 7-year period of conversion for our maintenance crews to repair lights. So instead of repairing lights, they replace lights, and we do it at a cost of $9 million. For option 2, it goes from $17.6 million to $12.9 million of new money we need. And then for option 3, it's $26.4 million of new money we would need.
Well, I think, in my opinion, I think we should go down option 2 until we can for sure say that a bond measure passed or not. I don't see a reason for us actually going down to option number 3. Again, this is just my opinion, but unless we had either a whole lot of extra money, which next year we have a $15.5 million deficit, or we pass a bond measure, which could or may not happen in November. So that is this is the way I would lean, and I know that that this is a tough decision to have, but I was here when we made those original recommendations, and even at that time, other manufacturers were coming to us saying, "I got something better."
Right.
And so, in any case, that would be my direction. Thank you.
Councilmember Depp?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Kip, when you were saying that this industry is somewhat matured, I mean, is there, would you say, a industry standard or two yet on terms of the light software controls?
So the industry that's fully mature is the LED lighting technology itself and the basic head. The smart controllers, as Kevin indicated, are getting more standardized in terms of some of the modularity, and is a more mature market. I think I would be overstepping to say it's fully mature. It's still evolving pretty rapidly. So there isn't a set of standards as such, and part of what we understand is it continues to be a very heterogeneous environment in terms of both how you do the connectivity and what software they use and how they get that back into back and forth between the street lights and a data center. So that's part of where in our IoT strategy, and I'll let Keshav weigh in on this if you'd like, part of what we're trying to determine would be what would be the right standards for us. What is it that we want to make sure around? And basically, the strong recommendation is that we want to pay a lot of attention to open standards, where there are standards, to interoperability in any system that we use, and to this notion of platform. That doesn't necessarily mean there's going to be one platform where everything goes, but that it takes into account the ability to add these together. So our thought is, if we were to put out an RFP today, for example, for controllers, we'd be biased toward things that used open standards, we'd be biased toward devices that allowed the interoperability and the modularity, and we'd be biased toward something that could deliver a platform that would grow over time. So that's how we would deal with the fact that it is maturing, but will continue to change and stay heterogeneous.
Okay, that kind of addresses my concern. I was just afraid that we would go with, I don't know, like a Lotus that, you know, and they get blown out by like Windows or like Mac or something.
And that's still the market is still at that point where that is a risk. But again, we believe the interoperability and the open standards help protect us around that.
Okay. Is there perhaps an option 4 wherein it's kind of a half step between option 2 and 3? Because the things that we might want to do, like do a citywide tribute to Prince. Oh, Deb left. Never mind. Like a Super Bowl, that city turned all their lights purple, or want to have a disco or something like that. Or for safety issues, for flooding and evacuation. Even on a plane, when they say like, please follow the lights, it's not all the lights turn green to follow. It's just like every 3 lights, right? So given that, with our considerations for wanting a smart city, would it be more cost effective to go like every 4th light, or,
So that becomes a little challenging in that in a lot of these cases, and Keshav or Kip can answer this technically, but the lights themselves, the controllers, require some kind of networking with each other. So they need to be in certain proximity to create the kind of the network strength that they need to communicate, kind of jump signal from one pole to the next. So the degree that these things can be spread out, it's unclear to me to the extent that that's possible. What I've seen thus far is that there does need to be some close proximity among the different units to maintain that connectivity. Other than that, that certainly is an option. Doing smart controllers in smaller areas, in certain areas rather than others, for whatever reason, that's an option. I did describe that we have 36,000 or 36,700 lights that still are to be converted, and we have 26,000 that have been converted. That $30 million cost is to upgrade all of those controllers. We could just do the new lights and leave the old ones as they are and save, $5 million from that price tag. So there are different options that we can consider there, but I don't know if Keshav or Kip have a comment on the technical capability of that.
Yeah, so typically, if you look at the controllers, just as Kevin was describing, they use often what's called a mesh network. And the mesh network relies on the nodes, in this case, the smart controller becomes a node, to do relatively short hops and to act as repeaters, a repeater amplifying the signal. So essentially you're creating a mesh, like a net of a network between the nodes themselves. You don't have a single thing broadcasting out and connecting everything. So the proximity and the ability to amplify the hops, I'm sure you could skip a street light here or there, but there's a limit to what you can do with and still maintain the mesh network. But the larger point that you're making, I think, is quite valid, which is one could pick any geographic area and go all in on, rather than, you don't have to do this at the citywide scale. So for example, we could say, okay, we're going to make this the smart cities district and we're going to test all of this stuff out and do it at scale, and then when we're ready we can deploy it across the rest of the city, for example. Or we can see what we can do with, as you've suggested, using a combination of the dumb street lights, if you will, and the smart street lights, and see if we can make that work. So those are all possible option 4s or option 3As or 3Bs, if you will.
With a few council meetings ago, when we approved the AT&T contract, we also created some sort of innovation fund. Digital inclusion fund, sorry. All right, so it would not go to this. All right, never mind. I guess then, lost my train of thought. With, so we don't have to do it, we can spread them out, or we can just go scale. I think with what we're trying to, the question of FOMO. I'm not too concerned with FOMO in this context, because I know there is, in the future there might be more bandwidth stuff that we can do with this stuff. But if we are concentrated on outcomes and what we want to actually do with these lights, emergency responses, disco parties from time to time, and just kind of creating a smart city, kind of getting to our goal of being the most innovative city by 2020, and stopping at that goal, like knowing when to stop, basically, and not trying to overreaching. We don't have to worry about FOMO. So if we can figure out like what exactly we want to do, achieve those outcomes of safety, lighting, and then being able to help people sleep by not too overly bright lights. It doesn't matter to me if, like in 5 years, you can teleport with a street light, because that's not what our goal is, right? And if we can still do the things that we want to do, I think even if this is outdated technology, so long as it's serving us well, then I'm okay with that. I have an iPhone 6. I can't take photos in portrait mode or whatever, but that's fine because I mainly call and just get on the internet with my phone and tweet. So it meets my necessary desires. So I'm not too afraid of FOMO, but I do think we're in a kind of a unique time in San Jose where we have Google coming down, we have the high-speed train station about to come online, Topgolf, all sorts of things happening in San Jose. And getting a citywide network of smart streetlights, I think, would be a nice cherry on top to create this smart city and encourage this notion of clustering, where we make San Jose the place where high-tech companies want to be, because they want to associate with the brand of San Jose being the capital of Silicon Valley, being the smart city, the most innovative city in the nation, whatever we want to brand ourselves as, and getting that kind of gray matter to San Jose. And I think having a citywide, not just district-wide, but specific district, but citywide polls like that, I think would behoove us, overall. And to the extent that we can attract that clustering with Google and with Bloom Energy and with whatever else is coming in, that will generate the revenues that we need to maintain these and hopefully do other things. So I think there is value in just going all in on some great concept and not worrying about what will be left out of future technology, so long as we clearly know what we want to achieve and stop there and not overextend ourselves. So that's my contribution. And then one last thing, I think in some cities, like let's say San Diego, they have like the gas lamp district, certain areas that are cool with their lamps. With the LEDs, I would just put it out there that we should have downtown or some special place in the city, Willow Glen, North San Jose, have these kind of something playful with the LED lights, so it becomes something of an attraction too. So it's not just your standard light your pathway, but something cool about it. Like a Bellagio water fountain type thing, light display at night, once on the hour on the weekends or something. So that's just me. So there you go. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Mary, you had follow up?
We've covered a lot of ground between Bellagio and teletransporting, so this is fantastic. I know that the use cases are difficult to anticipate. We think we've got a couple that are pretty substantial. I know there's, we talk about, for example, irrigation in the parks and how we could save water and money. And I know there's some public safety as well. So if we were to just confine ourselves to the known use cases where we think there's real impact, building on, I think, the good idea of Council Member Diep, rather than, I guess my question is, do these mesh networks have to be contiguous? Can we have splotches of mesh networks, for example, along neighborhood business districts, near our parks, et cetera, and the rest of the city would remain without the smart controllers?
Yeah, absolutely. As long as the mesh network itself has the integrity, you can have 2, 3, 4, 5, 22 mesh networks that are not connected to each other. They can be blotchy, if you will, all over the city.
Right.
There's some complexity with that in terms of dealing with it, but it's potentially it's quite possible.
Okay, that's helpful, Kip, because I've heard from folks on our team that the ROI on option 3 is pretty substantial, and that may be something we're not really hearing fully on the committee about what the benefits are really to our bottom line about some of these applications where we've got a use case that we know we can convert. I don't know if you want to speak to that at all, Kip.
I would, and I think let's imagine we've got a business district and a park, and they're next to each other. So I've got the smartest street lighting in there. I'm just going to go with the use cases that we know that the technology is there and appears to be mature enough and useful enough. If I wanted to, I can now connect my smart controllers in the park to the internet, and they can predict when it will rain and when it won't, and they can meter the sprinkling according to that, and they can also know when the field's going to be used and when it's not, so it's dry when the kids play on it and it's wet when they aren't. And I can improve my water efficiency by 30 to 40 to 50%. Some of the on-street parking solutions that we've seen, we no longer have to embed sensors in the road or send people around to chalk the back of your car. I can know without necessarily even having a picture of somebody whether there's a car there or not, and I can connect that in and manage and monitor on-street parking and provide more efficient information directly through Waze or Google Maps to exactly where the parking spaces are. I can integrate this potentially in with surveillance in areas that are crime hotspots or issues, and make sure that I've got cameras that are able to detect or react to situations that are problematic. I can do all of that with the street lighting as the base, and I could do it just along that strip that's the business district and the park, and I could also potentially provide Wi-Fi connectivity along that business district and in that park so that you're connected without needing to go an inch into, if you will, the residential area.
So if we were to explore then further, I really appreciate that, going with Councilmember Diep's option D, where we can identify those geographic areas where we have the strong use cases, and I think much stronger ROI, recognizing there will be other use cases in the future, and maybe we'll just have to go back out there with the bucket truck and install in those cases where we think the ROI is high enough. But being able to do that to where we can deliver results now, I think would be a huge benefit, and maybe will help us justify something greater than cases A or B. I know that may be a lot of work. I hope it's not. But
You know, just reacting off the top of the cuff here, which is always a little dangerous, my inclination is that that's actually a very powerful way to do the work, is to do our strategic mapping of where we think the use cases are, pick some places where we have multiple use cases and we think there's a real value to the technology, deploy at a reasonable enough scale so that it's really beyond the micropilot. It's actually more of because part of what we want to make sure is that we're able to do this at scale and continue to use the data. And then as we find value or we find issues, we can refine and iterate within a smaller context and then take it to the rest of the city. My sense is, both for functionality and for privacy concerns, we're not going to want to deploy all sensors in all areas of the city, right? So it's going to be business districts and places with like parks and places where a lot of people gather, or other interfaces like that most of the functionality is. And I think we can learn a lot very quickly and make a lot of decisions without having to be in 100% of the city.
Okay, well, I appreciate that, Kip. Thanks. I violated the mandate from the chair to ask only one follow-up question, so I'll move on.
Thank you, Mayor. I just have a couple of quick questions. First of all, I concur. I think that Councilmember Deb, that was a great idea in terms of having a focus area where we deploy those devices. I just want to kind of go back a little bit. Can you help me understand what the compelling reasons are for having a faster timeline to deploy the LEDs? I know the mayor mentioned safety, more lighting for safety reasons. Are there any other compelling reasons that we're moving the timeline? We want to move the timeline from 7 years to 4 years?
Well, I think one of the obvious benefits is we get energy savings sooner. So the quicker we convert, the quicker that we start earning or saving money on energy. Secondly is, I think as many pointed out, LEDs are a desirable light. People want their neighborhoods converted to LED. It's safer, it's a number of things. So just getting that done quicker is something that residents, I think, would appreciate. So those are the two things that come to my mind.
Okay, because the reason why I asked that question is, well, one, reading your report, I walked away from that report feeling like the energy savings were pretty much a wash, or pretty nominal, because we have the low sodium lights that are also energy efficient. So did I misinterpret that? Because again, based on what I read from your report, it was pretty much not a major factor in our decision making.
So yeah, and I apologize for that message coming across. The point was being made that we are not achieving energy savings like other agencies, where the energy savings itself is able to pay for the conversion, that there's a return and a reinvestment of that money that pays for the conversions. We unfortunately aren't in that position, and we'll need to find some funding to get this done. But as I'm looking at kind of energy savings costs once converted, we're in the $700,000 a year range. So that's significant once lights are converted.
Right.
Yeah.
And then the other thing in terms of speed, and to put some numbers to the kind of scenarios that I described, I'm reluctant to sort of sketch out what it would be for San Jose, but San Diego is estimating $20 to $30 million in operating expense and capital expense cost avoidance with their LED smart IoT deployment. So we haven't run the numbers for San Jose, and I tend to be very, very conservative in my economic analysis. So when I did the economic analysis of the ballpark, it was some of the lower numbers that they'd seen, and I would expect we'd take a similarly appropriately conservative approach to our numbers here. But our expectation is that part of the reason to move faster is there are significant efficiencies to be gained in core services that we already provide. And our best example of that is, of course, the irrigation. We know this technology works and can both lower the cost of water and provide better fields. So why wouldn't we get the connectivity out there quicker is sort of some of the reason to move with speed. That being said, the balance is you don't want to bet on the wrong technology, and you don't want to lock yourself into pick your favorite archaic technology that was outmoded in a year and a half. But we do believe, again, that the market is mature enough and we've got enough expertise that we could go out to bid and make a procurement that would balance our needs to move rapidly with our desire to stay relevant over the longer haul.
Actually, you're one step ahead of me, Kip. Right now, I'm focused on the objective 2, But also objective 3, establishing a smart city foundation, is also my top 2. But I'm still on cost of conversion.
Sorry to cut in on you, sir.
But thank you for being one step ahead of me. And number 2 does jump out at me because there is a significant cost. We haven't identified where that money is going to come from. And I definitely see the benefit of deploying LEDs, for all the reasons that were stated. But if I had to rank that, from, the list of requests or desires that my residents have, it would probably be 5 or 6, below, fixing the roads and public safety and other things. So, I'm hesitant to go all in terms of having a rapid or a faster deployment of the LEDs. But I also recognize that we have a desire and a need to move forward with our Smart Cities Foundation. So I was thinking more of like a option 1A, where we deploy or we convert the LEDs to LEDs, and at the same time deploy smart controllers, and do that in a phased approach as well. And in addition, incorporating Councilmember Depp's suggestion of identifying areas that we can do a focused deployment of smart controllers. So I just want to throw that out as an idea, because I think that if we try to do everything too quickly, then we're pulling money from other priorities that we have, as well as obviously putting us in a situation where we're not able to address some of these other issues that we want to address. Another point I want to bring up too is with option 1, the doing it in-house. Kevin, you mentioned that there was a $9 million differential in that option 1. Can you break down what that $9 million is? What's incorporated in that?
So you break it down in terms of, so we
So I
spend.
understand
yeah,
the in-house cost
Yeah.
that we're going to spend anyway.
Yeah.
But
So
what's
I'll
the
break.
additional $9 million?
Yeah, so we spend about $250,000 a year just on bulbs, just purchasing lamps to replace the lamps when they burn out. We have 2 maintenance workers that's their job, is replacing lamps. We have 2 electricians that replace and repair fixtures as they fail and other problems with the streetlight itself. At a cost of about, whatever that, over, $750,000 a year or something. I'm not doing the math this quickly, but, over that 7-year conversion period for option 1 at a cost of $7.5 million. So over $1 million a year that we spend in those activities to repair our failed streetlights. So the idea is, instead of doing that, we convert the lights. We would need additional money to purchase the more expensive fixtures rather than just bulbs. But we already are expending that cost for maintenance and repair.
Okay, so the real differential is the difference in the price of the sodium bulbs versus the LEDs.
Correct. Correct.
Makes up the bulk of the difference?
Yes, thanks for clarifying that, yeah.
Okay. So next question is on the whole aspect of repeat trips or touch once. Would our in-house staff or would an external contractor be able to roll one truck, have one electrician do the wiring for both the LEDs as well as the smart controllers?
Yes.
So it's the same skill set, so we wouldn't have to have 2 different electricians or 2 different entities doing the work?
Yeah, yes and no. So installing the light, converting the light, installing the smart controller could be done by a single person. There is always a configuration and setup task associated with the smart controllers. So, configuring the network, making sure that the system is online, we can communicate with the smart controller. Typically, we have a few people in our electrical shop who are experts at that. They know the system well. They're not the guys that are out there replacing the light and the controller per se. So it does take a team of people, but essentially it's one person doing that conversion and that smart controller installation at a time. Once there is enough smart controllers set up and the network can be established, we have somebody on the other end that's doing that network configuration and management.
For the 26,000 that were already installed, was that done in-house or by an outside contract?
We had an outside contractor do it, but our in-house staff were intimately involved in the network configuration setup, installation up front. So the contractors did the physical conversion of the light and the installation of the smart controllers, and then our crews were involved in the network setup and configuration.
Okay. And so you feel comfortable that our in-house people can do
Absolutely.
the full
Yeah,
complete job, one role?
absolutely, no doubt about it. The work that we're doing now in terms of, smart traffic signals and communications and between our engineers and our electricians and those folks, they're very capable.
And I just have to say, unlike me, who doesn't actually know how to do these things, Kevin is an actual electrician who actually knows how to do this with his hands, and also has been running these crews up and down for years. So we have a high level of confidence in our DOT team on this particular issue.
So going back to my option 1A, so Kip, are there any issues with either not having the economy of scale or other deployment issues that would prevent us from having a kind of a hybrid approach of replacing the LEDs or converting them to LEDs on a as-needed basis when we go out and do the repairs, and then also including the smart controllers?
And also including the smart controllers in a specific area or over time?
Over time, but also incorporating Councilmember Depp's suggestion of identifying.
Yeah, the
a
difficulty
specific
with the
area.
overtime is that you essentially get a random distribution or semi-random distribution as you burn out and as you replace, and so you won't get a functioning mesh network unless and until you get a density of nodes that happen to be in the right place by the random replacement. So the difficulty, there's no difficulty with doing a section of an area with smart controllers, but if I'm just replacing the existing ones with the smart controllers, depending on the connectivity and depending on how they're wired, I actually may not get the functionality out of them until and unless I have the rest of the streetlights in a certain area replaced. There are some types of connectivity like LTE that are not dependent on the mesh network, but those are more expensive and at this point, significantly more expensive than a mesh network.
Great. That's all the questions I have. Thank you, Kip. All right. We have a speaker, Blair Beekman.
Hi. I know we're all trying, but it's been about 7 months, and you haven't delivered any sort of accountability reports for the tech that is within the streetlight IoT process. It was vaguely mentioned by yourselves during a well-intentioned civic innovation process during the fall of 2017 about reports and ways to talk about this, and I thank you for this effort today. And you did spend some time on the IoT, which was real nice of you, and the mayor asked a really interesting question that Kip answered, that with some IoT things, you plan for small little areas, and from there that you can work out what that individual area may need for a time and share that with other people of the city and build a program from there. To myself, that seems like what you're already doing. And what the problem is that once you start doing that, you don't share that with the public. And I'm getting a little tired of that. And I know that this is exactly what this accountability with tech surveillance ordinance is about for you and what you want to work on. But just to remind you, in nice guy terms, that this is the stuff you need to share with the public. And I sound like a fool when I talk about it, but it's that easy. But yet it's that difficult, and it's that difficult of a bridge to cross sometimes. And I just hope you can learn the lessons here and learn how to pass these little projects on to the public. And give small ways, and just small, simple ways. You know, that's all I'm asking at this time. And if you can't work on the open meeting process for the ordinance, this tech ordinance, can you at least work on how to make IoT tech projects available in this coming few months? Thank you.
We have next up is Roxana Marachi, Victor Sin, and Emily Douglas.
Good afternoon. Thank you. Dr. Roxana Marashi. I'm a researcher and the education chair of the San Jose Silicon Valley NAACP. Sounds like this is a done deal, the LED thing, so I'll just express some of the critical questions and concerns I usually come with. One is I found an article that says the American Medical Association warns of health and safety problems from white LED streetlights. I'm sure that the planning team is aware of it already. They have a guidelines, official policy statement that was adopted unanimously in 2016. One of the concerns is that blue light scatters more on the human eye than the longer wavelength of yellow and red, and sufficient levels can damage the retina. This can cause problems seeing clearly for safe driving or walking at night. So I'd like to know if the deployment of these LED lights in San Jose abide by the guidelines of the American Medical Association or not. If there are different color temperatures, how the public can be aware of the color temperature within each of the neighborhoods, if that differs by the different technology that's just been proposed. Also, would the cameras have the kind of resolution that would provide for facial recognition? The ACLU has brought national exposure to the racial bias in facial recognition software and technology. That's an issue that's a very serious concern to our communities. And then finally, I have a question about smart poles, if that's connected to some of this LED work. There is a large smart pole right outside of our administration building at San Jose State. Looks to be maybe about 30 to 40 feet away from the building. It's very tall, very wide, and there's a warning sign, you know, the toxicity warning, that's about 20 feet above ground. You cannot see it from eye length. Even if you snap a picture at it and you try to expand it, you can't see the writing. That does no good for anyone wanting to know what's the actual warning about. So if those kinds of health and safety considerations could be taken seriously, I think it would be a really good thing for the public. Again, the advisory committee has only technology people, folks from the tech industry. There's no one from science, medicine, other forms of research, or public health. I think that's an issue. I really hope that you provide more public forums for engagement. Thank you.
Thank you. Victor Sin and Emily Douglas.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council members. My name is Victor Sin. I live in San Jose, and I'm also the chair of the Santa Clara Valley chapter of the ACLU of Northern California. I just have one question. In any options, that involve advanced light control, in other words, having the potential ability of mounting cameras and other devices, my question is, will the following minimally acceptable term still apply? This minimally acceptable term was or is in the memo written by the mayor on June 12, 2017, in the context of the pilot program for smart street lights. The term reads, no cameras will be deployed on any street pole that capture video of anything other than vehicular traffic until a privacy policy has been vetted publicly and agreed to by council. I would like to know whether that term still applies in the current context. Thank you.
Thank you. Emily Douglas.
Good Afternoon, members of the committee. I'm Emily Douglas from NG Services, and we've been proud to be the city's energy partner since 2013. So we were the ESCO mentioned in the staff report you've been discussing. I had a different logo on my business card at that point, but we have the same team still based here in San Jose and the same contract we're working with city staff on. As the memo mentioned, we did about 18,000 lights in 2014 and 15. Since then, though, we are also part of a global company that manages about 1.2 million light points around the world, including a lot of the applications you've talked about. So emergency strobing lights in Texas, decorative lights for historic sites across Europe as well. So I'm just so happy to see the progress today and the discussion. The main thing I wanted to say, and it's really come out in the discussion, is that the thing that you and that staff are trying to do is really hard, to make the city better in an economic way with technology moving as well. So I just want to commend you for the thought and the analysis you've put into it today, and I look forward to helping in any way we can. Thank you.
Okay. And Blair? Oh, you spoke, yeah. Shows you how I tuned them. All right. Councilmember Campbell, you had another question?
Sorry, second bite at the apple. I honestly don't think that we're ready to make a decision today. I know that there are other technologies besides mesh. I know that there are web-enabled technologies for controllers that potentially are plug and play and maybe more conducive to option 1 or option 2. So I would like those options evaluated before we move forward with anything. And then I also wouldn't, I also wanted your take on whether we can get cost efficiencies by going out with a full RFP, or if we're doing this piecemeal, or at least if we're going to be buying these controllers, are we going to be buying them all at once and then having them put in piecemeal? So those are the types of things that I'm looking for guidance from your office. Again, I kind of don't want us to make a move that could be outdated, fairly quickly. And the mesh sounds to me like the old technology that we were already purchasing 3 years ago, which you told me it was outdated today. It sounds to me like the same technology, a little. Again, I'm a neophyte at this, so I would like other technologies to be explored before we make a full decision. And I hope my colleagues would agree to that.
That feels very reasonable to us, and we don't view this as a decision. We view this as input to the next level of analysis and coming back to you. And to be clear, there are multiple technologies around connectivity, and there are multiple technologies around the controller itself. And so different types of mesh networks are one type of connectivity. There are LTE, there are narrowband for LTE, there's Sigfox, there's Zigbee, there's all sorts of connectivity layers. And so we do anticipate, as we do the analysis, to not just assume that we're going with one type of connectivity or one type of controller. And I think that's very reasonable what you've asked us in our next steps.
Thank you.
Thank you, Council Member. Just wanted a point of clarification that we're not going to be deploying any cameras or any devices like that until we have a privacy policy in place. But I actually have one last question on this topic. In the report, you spoke to the telcos, but there was nothing else about the strategy of monetizing our light poles. Kind of going back to the previous strategy, can you just speak to that real quick in terms of why we didn't include that as one of the options or strategies?
I say there are kind of a couple of places where we can think about monetizing the value of our light poles. The clearest one, of course, is in the telecommunications company's desire and need for small cells. And so we're actively pursuing those deals right now. I think the other opportunities for monetization, both we want to make sure that are take into account notions around privacy and data protection, but those would likely emerge with the IoT. And we're not in a position of understanding what we would do with IoT yet to know what the real monetization potential is. Kevin, did you want to add on that one? So yeah.
Great, thank you. So can I get a motion to accept this report, please?
Motion to accept.
Been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right. Thank you, gentlemen. And we are on to the My San Jose. We swapped 3 and 4, so we're on the My San Jose update.
Good afternoon again, Mr. Chair, members of the committee, and members of the general public. Still Kip Harkness. This presentation, we're going to provide an update on My San Jose, and then we'll follow right on the heels with the digital strategy, since the two are interrelated. Over the past year, we've developed impressive traction with over 30,000 users of the app without really doing any advertising or marketing on it. And in the coming year, we are focused on investing in the platform so that we can do better work at scale. As we like to say, our work in My San Jose represents the tip of the spear of our digital services strategy, which you'll hear more about immediately following our My San Jose presentation. With that, I'd like to introduce Michelle Thong, who is going to take on the rest of the presentation and introduce the rest of the team.
Thank you, Kip. Good afternoon, Honorable Chair, members of the committee, staff, and members of the public. I'm Michelle Tong, Service Innovation Lead in the City Manager's Office, and I'll be co-presenting today with Charles Amos, Product Manager for My San Jose in the IT department. We're going to start by updating you on where we are now with My San Jose. And I want to start by acknowledging the most important way to think about My San Jose, which is from our customer's perspective. For our residents, My San Jose is an app that lives on their smartphone or in their web browser. And as they go about their daily lives, taking their kids to the park, biking home from work, they can use that app to report issues that they see in their neighborhoods or the rest of San Jose, such as illegal dumping, abandoned vehicles, or potholes. It's easy, and it hardly requires any effort. Of course, behind the scenes, delivering an easy, satisfying experience to that resident requires a complex service delivery ecosystem. This is a highly simplified diagram of what happens behind the scenes for My San Jose. I'm actually putting this up over the protests of people who actually know what happens because it's so simplified, but it does give you a sense of how much more there is behind the app. The real secret sauce is the integration that happens between our residents' customer-facing experience and the back end. So the requests that are submitted through the app are routed by our citywide customer relationship management platform to different back-end work systems in every department so that city staff can dispatch and complete the work orders, with residents receiving automatic notifications when the work orders are completed or closed. This body of work stretches across 5 different service teams in 3 different departments that respond to their service requests, and in some cases, vendors that also participate in the service request response. Back-end software systems that manage the workflows for those service teams, and the IT teams that manage those back-end systems. Our wonderful customer contact center in the information technology department that responds to all manner of general requests in the app, basically everything else other than those the 5 main service types. The city council offices and other city teams that work closely with residents, our product manager in the IT department, and multiple technology vendors, including AST, Oracle, Salesforce, and AppOrder. So providing a great experience for My San Jose users requires deep collaboration across this complex ecosystem of people, process, and technology. And Charles is going to provide a bit deeper dive onto where we are now in that collaboration.
Good afternoon. My name is Charles Amos. I'm the product manager for My San Jose. And here's a My San Jose timeline. Over the past 18 months, we spanned from development to launch to stabilization, and now we're focusing on improvements. In November 2016, the city awarded the RFP to AST Corporation and Oracle. Following a rapid development period, including robust testing, the city officially launched My San Jose on July 31st, 2017. After the launch, the city has continued to stabilize and incrementally improve on the app. We are now on version 1.5 of the app, which was released just a month ago. In addition to making improvements to the technology platform, we're also working with other teams to make their processes smoother. Last month, we organized CRM trainings for council offices, departmental staff, to educate them on how to respond to residents' questions and their requests. I'm excited to share some details about the latest release, 1.5, which incorporates a few key usability enhancements, and it's all based on user feedback. Social media account login. Users can now use their existing login from Google, Facebook, or Twitter. For users who prefer this option, they won't need to remember their passwords. We've also included an updated privacy policy, which also provides details on social media data privacy, where we let users know that we don't share or store their private social media profile details, and we also give them the option to opt out. More intuitive map navigation, which solves the location issue we've been facing. So users can now select a location on the map. It's been tricky in the past, but now they can move around on the map just like they would do on other apps such as Google Maps and Uber. We are expecting it may reduce the confusion and reduce frustrations. GPS location detection for images. The app can now extract the location from geotagged images very easily. With 1.5, over 40 changes have been made. Now, it's important for us to know where we are now and what we've learned and how we can keep on improving My San Jose. Championing the customer. From the beginning, My San Jose has been delivering an awesome customer experience. Now the app is being used by over 30,000 residents. We need to continue to understand what's working and what's not. Over the past month, we've conducted 8 interviews with residents. This empowering feeling translates into residents engaging more with the city and feeling more connected. One of the residents mentioned a quote, and what I'd like to say is what this resident actually said. My San Jose is the biggest way I've seen that shows that the city cares. At the same time, our residents also feel feelings of frustration. When requests aren't responded in a timely manner or closed out without a clear reason, they feel that their complaints are being ignored. Another source of frustration comes when city staff have to reroute requests to other internal or external groups. Learning through data. This is just a starting point. On this slide, we're just showing the location of various requests throughout the city, the number of requests by service type, by district. And also, this data allows us to analyze requests and provide more content on how we can improve over time. The purple? Oh, I would have to look at that. Sorry, I don't have the legend with me. So going through this slide here, learning through data. In version 1.5, we include a customer satisfaction survey in every closed notification email, where several requests are asked and several questions are asked. And one of the one that stands out is, how likely are you to recommend My San Jose to a friend or colleague? As you can see, we have a high percentage of promoters who rate the experience as a 9 or 10, but we also have a significant percentage of detractors who rate the experience as a 6 or less. Ultimately, we want to improve the experience so that the detractors become promoters. Iterating to improve. Now, this has been a very hot topic regarding closing the loop, providing better communications regarding status updates. What we thought initially was that we could just provide a simple status update that shows whether the ticket is open, in progress, or if it's closed. What we learned is that a lot of people, they wanted more details. They weren't satisfied with just saying it's closed. So what we ended up doing in version 1.5 is we are now sending an email out which says not just the close status, but the last comment by the city. So they see this one whole email instead of a decoupled email, and it gives them more of information about what happened to their request. As time moves on, we are trying to optimize our communication strategy with our residents so that they could feel as if we are providing a higher level of customer service.
So what's next for My San Jose? What's next for My San Jose after version 1.5? Well, based on everything we've learned about how our customers and our staff are using My San Jose, from qualitative interviews to quantitative data, we're developing a pretty clear idea of how the My San Jose service ecosystem can be improved, both in terms of the technology platform and our business process. Here's a list of some of our top priorities in no specific order for investments we hope to make in the coming year in what we're calling My San Jose 2.0. Obviously, as Charles described, we want to clarify the status communication, which involves not just changing how the app and the notification works, but also the workflows of the service teams. Adding support for one or more additional languages is obviously important for our community, and I'm pleased to report that we'll be using the expertise of 2 Code for America fellows to help us understand the experience of non-English speaking residents so that we can make sure that My San Jose is taking their needs into account. We certainly want to improve usability in the app and on the web and support efficient workflows for back-end service teams. Based on our conversations, our service teams have already identified several common challenges in the process where we could create more efficiencies, particularly in triaging the high volume of requests that come in each day, and streamlining how we refer requests both internally between departments as well as externally to other agencies. As you've seen, we've taken first steps towards having better feedback loops on customer satisfaction, and we want to get even more granular so that we can get that feedback on a per transaction basis, so that whenever we make a tweak, we can see if it's making a difference or not, positively or negatively. And that ties into increased use of data analytics, not just for individual services, which is already happening to a fair extent, but across the service ecosystem. And finally, we need to make sure that the technology is easy to maintain and scale, not just the customer-facing app, but actually most critically the integration with all the back-end systems. This is really important because it determines how easy or painful it will be to add new services in the future, which we know there is demand for. Overall, as Kip said, we are thinking about My San Jose as the tip of the spear of our city's digital service transformation, which is the subject of our next presentation. And specifically, I want to highlight 5 key aspects of our approach to My San Jose that have worked really well. First, to empower an internal team to own the vision. In government, it is traditional to focus a lot on the procurement process and then let the selected vendor drive the development. And in My San Jose, a very intentional choice was made for the city to really take the lead role in setting a clear vision and priorities based on our understanding of our residents and our business needs. Second, start with a handful of priority services. Despite pressure to implement a long list of features to suit different stakeholder groups, the team remained very disciplined about first nailing the experience for a handful of services before scaling to add more. The likelihood of success is much greater when we limit the scope and iterate on a working product rather than taking a big bang approach where we try to do everything at once. Thirdly, design the experience from beginning to end. The launch of My San Jose was as smooth as it was because the design process considered both the resident's experience reporting an issue as well as the back-end workflows required to respond to the request. Too often we can get caught up in the requirements and features of a new piece of technology rather than thinking about the overall experience. Fourth, test early and often with real customers. My San Jose, to my knowledge, was the first technology product to be tested with the public prior to official launch. We actually tested some prototypes that were based on taking screenshots from a PowerPoint presentation with real residents. And getting that feedback as early as possible makes a world of difference in giving us the space to make the changes we need. And finally, launch is just the beginning. Delivering a great experience requires significant work to maintain, stabilize, improve, and iterate on the product. So with that in mind, we see our work on My San Jose as a continuous iterative cycle where we keep the customer needs at the center, learn through data, and iterate to improve. This is a continuous feedback loop that has helped hundreds of tech companies from Airbnb to Zipcar to develop the services that attract and delight millions of users. But it's new to municipal government. And this is an approach that we need to continue to take with My San Jose and also to scale across our organization to deliver more great digital services.
Before we swing to digital services, just one real-time piece of information. The purple dots on the council districts that you saw, Councilmember Camus, are streetlight outages, reported streetlights that are not LEDs.
Yeah, so all the purple dots will go away when you figure out the solution to the previous item. No pressure.
That's good. Actually, me and my son walk around using the app for the street lights.
And we're respecting your privacy, so you added yourself on that one.
Did you want to keep going? Go for it.
Yeah. So we're going to continue with digital services because it's really of a piece with the My San Jose update. So this item is to talk about digital service delivery more broadly across our organization. And the first question I want to look at is, what does it mean to deliver digital services? I think the success of My San Jose with our residents shows us why we must shift towards digital services, because it's what they expect and because it results in better outcomes. When My San Jose works really well, it's a seamless, amazing experience for our residents. It's something that they can do wherever they are, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And at the same time, our ongoing commitment to improve the frustrating parts of My San Jose shows us as an organization what's required of our people, our process, and our technology to deliver a great digital experience. The Smart City vision that was adopted by Council 2 years ago challenges us to be a user-friendly city. So as a starting point, let's say that a user-friendly city is a place where a city's services are easy to find, easy to use, and accessible anywhere, including online, where our processes aren't intimidating or time-consuming or require a long bus ride to City Hall, but are as easy as clicking a few buttons on your phone. As a city, we're responsible for dozens, if not hundreds, of services, customer-facing transactions that help our residents or businesses achieve a goal. And if we consider how many of them truly meet the standard of being easy to find, easy to use, and accessible anywhere, that's probably a pretty short list. To be generous, let's say it includes the 6 services in My San Jose and a few others where the teams have been very intentional about crafting that experience. But alongside those, there are dozens more where we still require an in-person visit to City Hall, a phone call, a paper form, or a complicated and confusing online process. So our task is to take all of those services on the right side and shift them over to the left side. So that whether you're organizing a special event in a park or troubleshooting your household's recycling service, you can do that in a way that's easy to find, easy to use, and easy to access. Now, given what we've learned from My San Jose, how might we organize our people, process, and technology to do this at scale? First and foremost, our people. Delivering digital services is going to require that we think differently about the skills that our staff need to successfully manage and operate our services. We need to understand and champion our customers' needs. We need to be able to look at data to understand how our services are doing and continuously implement improvements. Yes, there are certain skills that we might want to hire for, such as product managers, service designers, and developers, but really it's not so much about getting external tech talent as fostering this mindset that digital technology is an integral part of how we deliver our services, not something on top or on the side. And supporting our people also means thinking about how we organize teams to work collaboratively across domains. You can see this with My San Jose in terms of how the collaboration stretches across departments and from office staff to field staff. This particular photo is of development services staff who normally spend their time reviewing plans, but here they're learning how to prototype their ideas to improve their process and testing them with real customers who recently opened a gym in San Jose. And you'll hear more about this work in our next presentation. Secondly, process. It's not enough to have good people. We also have to have processes that empower these people to do their best work. Delivering digital services that evolve with our customers' needs requires processes that are flexible enough to adapt as we learn new things. Building in time for teams to reflect on what's working and what's not and adjust course accordingly. So our processes need to be iterative rather than fixed. And this is a photo of the abandoned vehicles team in the transportation department, a team that has really embraced an iterative process in response to the high demand for their services. In this photo, they're taking a look at their process from end to end and identifying places for potential improvement. And they've actually been working really closely with their IT team to rapidly iterate on their back-end work order system and generate data analytics to understand where they can have the biggest impact.
Michelle, I'm sorry to interrupt. I just want to mention, Councilmember Camus just left. I'm about to leave too because we have a VTA committee meeting right now. So it's not out of disrespect or lack of importance of this. We're just racing off to another committee. Thank you.
Thank you.
So finally, technology. What do we need from our technology in order to be able to deliver easy-to-use digital services? Primarily, we need to be able to iterate on our technology, which is actually much easier said than done. That it means shifting our processes so that tech implementations are not multi-year projects that we do once and then are done with, but that we consider as ongoing products and services. That means choosing technology that our staff have the ability to configure, adapt, and scale without being locked into choices that we made 5, 10, or 15 years ago, so that we can add different pieces as we need them. As an example, this is a screenshot of one portion of the homepage for the new city website. And choosing the website platform for our communications team was not just about the look and feel of the homepage, but ensuring that the content management system is easy for over 300 staff to edit and update, flexible enough to accommodate the needs of different groups, while providing an intuitive experience for website visitors. So to close, why do we need a digital services strategy? In a way, we're already doing a lot of this work. This slide shows projects on the current roadmap that already relate closely to this work. But what we still need is an overarching strategy that aligns our investments in people, process, and technology across all of these efforts and other projects that are yet to be defined. A strategy that helps us articulate what we need to get right, how to scale that approach across our organization, and how to stay aligned across all these various projects and departments that are involved in the transformation. Our immediate next steps are to do at least a partial inventory of our city services that are candidates for digital transformation, identify some teams of people to work on a few of those services, and start doing that work. And what we learn from this will inform our strategy on how to move forward. And with that, I'll turn it back to Kip for some closing perspective.
I think it's useful to start with to end with the outside context, which is very clear to everybody who's been around for the last decade or so. Starting in 2005, especially around 2007, we just saw a transformation in the consumer and the customer experience. Everything from Amazon offering us free shipping to streaming services from Spotify to, of course, the now ubiquitous iPhone, to summoning cars with Uber, Airbnb, and so on. And what this has meant is that the consumer experience has gotten easier, faster, quicker, better, high and to the right. When what we know, however, is that the government experience hasn't followed that same pattern. And so I use this example as one that, because it's a generational one. I was talking with my teenager the other day, and he was looking on something on Amazon, and I explained to him not card catalogs, but the catalogs like Sears and how we used to order things, and how we'd flip through it and dog ear it and put everything together and write the list together and add the costs and write a check or get a money order or stick money in there and mail it off and hope that 12 to 14 weeks later something would come back. And sometimes it didn't, because not everything was as reliable as Sears, or it would get lost in the mail, or would go to the wrong address, and when it arrived, if it was the wrong thing, you really couldn't exchange it. That was it. It was done. And my teenager said, well, that's a terrible system. And he's correct. And unfortunately, we have a few more card catalogs, Sears catalogs in our repertoire of services than we have Amazon's. And so what we're talking about is for those services that we deliver that are simple or complex, we need to begin to be able to make them much more accessible to our consumers. One area of complexity is that, unlike a business, we cannot and should not turn off some of the other channels by which we provide that service. There are going to be people who need or want to access us by coming down to City Hall or talking to us over the phone, or other special needs that are not appropriate for the digital channel. So we're going to have to keep some of our catalogs going while we do the Amazon, unlike a private business, to make sure that all of our residents are able to get the services that they need the way that they're comfortable getting them. And it's also important that we not just do this once at a time over and over again. We need to build a framework where the 150 plus digital services that we want to have don't have to go through this journey all by themselves every single time. So we need to build a core curriculum, a core tool set, and some core technologies that are accessible to the later arrivals in digital services that are very easy for them to use. And that's part of the reason we want a centralized leadership around this. You could probably do half a dozen great digital services if you let the teams do it themselves, but you could never transform the entirety of the digital experience in San Jose unless you have centralized investments in technology, people, and process that are repeatable at scale. The good news that I'll close on is I feel like we have very engaged departments that are open to learning, and again, we have an effective tip of the spear with our My San Jose work, which is piercing right at the heart of some of our biggest problems for residents. With that, we'll close, and we're happy to take engagement on both the digital services strategy and our My San Jose 2.0 work. Thank you.
Councilmember Davis.
Thank you. I just want to thank you guys so much for the My San Jose app. And the upgrades that you've made over the last year have all been fantastic and for the better. And I didn't even know the map feature had been upgraded, and I'm super excited about it, because sometimes when I'm out with the dog, I have enough to like take the picture, and then I don't want to do it right there. But I've had trouble getting, going back, okay, I was 3 blocks away, and clicking the feature. And I just tried it now, and I'm like, ooh, super excited. So thank you for that. But most importantly, I know that you've heard a lot from my office over the last year, and a lot of it has been about the back-end workflow changes, and we're getting very good comments about those changes. So I just want to highlight, I know customer service has changed what they do. We've gotten some positive comments about that. So when there's a general request, they're forwarding it on and letting the person, the resident, know what they've done, as opposed to saying you need to do this. And I think that's great. It's fantastic. And I know that's been a little bit of a change in the way that they used to do business. So I appreciate that. But I want to give an even bigger shout out to the abandoned vehicle team, because they are going out and they are tagging those vehicles within a day of getting the request. And I know it because I've seen it in my own neighborhood on vehicles that either I or my husband have reported. So, and we've actually had a lot of residents call in and say, oh my gosh, they actually tagged the vehicle right away. So I just want to thank you guys and give you the shout outs, because I know I've been a pain in your side over the last year, that you guys have made a lot of changes as a result of the app. I have only one question, which is on the general request. it looked like there were more general requests than anything else. I know that's a catch-all. Is there a breakdown for what's in the general requests that we can add to the feature? And is that going to happen this year, or what part of the sort of the product life cycle are we in? Are we going to be able to add either homeless concerns or parks concerns? Those are just the two off the top of my head that I've used for general requests.
Great. Some of these service types, we're in the middle of discussing them and how we could best implement them into the app and provide still an awesome customer experience. What we've seen with the general request, as you mentioned, it is kind of like a catch-all. And I still believe that there are areas that we still have to analyze and, again, see how it best fits. And even newer services that are coming in, such as clean energy. And so these are coming into general requests, and we'll further analyze them and see how we could best implement them.
And if I can add on, so parks actually is, at least one point when we did the analysis, the number one parks-related requests. Garbage is full, other comments about parks conditions. And then the other thing is the next services, though, aren't slated until we get to 3.0. So from what you've seen in the feedback you've given us, and we've gotten from other departments, is there are some foundational things we need to do to make it continually more modular. So we won't just invest in making, adding a few new services now or in the short run, that take a lot of effort, but still stay small in scale. We need to make those investments in version 2, My San Jose 2, which is part of what's in the budget, so that we can then start adding the 7th through the 20th much faster. But right now the bones aren't there to really, honestly tell you that we can add those new services at scale well.
Okay.
Yes, and this is where I think the digital services strategy comes in. You know, part of the advice is you don't want to put your technology over a bad process, right? So not to disparage anybody's existing process, but we'd like to make sure that as we prioritize the next round of services, which we'll be doing in parallel with the 2.0, that prioritization, we can also see if there are opportunities for doing the process improvements essentially in advance of putting the digital layer on top, so that when we come in with the digital layer, it's on top of what we believe is a more effective and efficient system to be process to begin with. But we do see things like park complaints as rising to the top in both volume, and one of the key criteria for us is this something that when we get the complaint we can actually respond effectively, because part of what we wanted to make sure was in the brand of My San Jose is just what you've described. Oh my gosh, they did that, they came out, they fixed it. So if there are problems that are more of the wicked variety that can't really be solved, I don't see those as coming into the app anytime soon, even though they might be very important ones that the city is facing.
Thank you. That's really helpful. And just to put a plug in, I know I talked with Angel recently, and he said even when our office is contacting them about parks, that he likes it to go through the parks concerns email address, because then they have a tracking system for that. And Parks has always been super responsive to everything that we all are, maintenance requests and stuff like that just are random things that happen at the park. But it sounds like their process might be easier to integrate than, I just mentioned homeless concerns and parks in the same, and I know homeless concerns, they're actually reworking their own process for that. So just a little plug for parks to go next.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Depp.
Yes, thank you. So I'm really gratified to see what you guys are doing and you're thinking and taking community feedback, and that's really wonderful. I mean, I have a lot of thoughts about it, but I don't want to get too far ahead. I know you guys are working on 2.0, and I'm thinking about like 10.0. But I guess one thing that I think is tangible for 2.0, and I don't think would put too much of a work burden on you, it's not a technical issue, is the information part. I think the city doesn't do a good job of kind of educating the community generally, and something that I want to focus on in my office at least is kind of the educational council member, if you will. And so if we can use the app to increase kind of civic awareness, just in terms of, so there was a screenshot that said case closed, referred to Caltrans, right? So that's great in terms of information, but I think we could do better by just saying we refer to Caltrans. Caltrans is a state agency in charge of this because our freeway exits are state-owned land. and the city can't do anything about it. Just that extra piece of information so they know, well, just stop calling the city with freeway issues because we're just going to refer it anyway. Maybe they can direct Caltrans, contact them directly. We'll take care of the stuff in the city, but then, hey, you're over in the county now, and the county does this. And just helping them understand the jurisdictional issues and navigating the alphabet soup of city, county, state agencies, I think, would be helpful and something that, I do in my office anyway. We all do. But it would help us magnify that effort through an app.
Absolutely. Educating the customer about the services and setting their expectations about what to expect from the app is a really important part of making it a good experience for them. Thank you.
So that's my only feedback. Thank you.
Yes, go ahead, Councilmember Davis.
I just have one comment on that because I have a lot of jurisdictional issues. I have county pockets. I have a lot of freeways going through. And I got to tell you, even if you educate the residents, they don't care. They just want us to take care of it and to interface with the other governmental agencies for them, which I think is a reasonable expectation. So don't change the app to say, don't put it on, don't report through this app again in this location. I don't think we want to do that.
Oh, sure. I wasn't suggesting, stop bugging us, but I just think, if you
I think you said stop bugging us.
No. I say so they can stop, submitting the claims if they are enlightened enough to understand that this is just a thing. But I understand it's in our city. We do want to capture the data of where the problem spots are. But to the extent that, we get flooded with 100 requests and we're just making 100 referrals, that's not optimal city time either. So, they can either go directly to the correct agency, which I think is in some ways ideal in a frictionless world. But just that piece of understanding, what a city does versus what a county does versus, so that extra sentence of, we referred to Caltrans. Caltrans is the state agency that, deals with freeway, whatever, and this part is owned by state land or something. Just that sentence or two, so they can be informed with, okay, this is why every time I go to Councilmember Deb Davis and I can email her 100 times, why is she ignoring me? Why has Caltrans District 4 not come down and picked up the garbage along exit, whatever? Why is she not doing anything? She's not doing anything. But if they understand that we are constrained as a city, we can't direct the state to do anything, we can only refer it on, that I think is a helpful educational piece.
Yes, Councilmember, and so two of the things that we're trying to do here is both the graceful handoff and advocating. So from the data that we now see that a lot of cities don't have, we can show the volume of those types of requests that a city gets, and we can say we're not alone. So we've tried reaching out to our partners and some of those other agencies and say, can we come up with an open 311 standard where we can just transfer this to you? So far, we have no biters at that apple, but we'll keep on advocating it because that really is a better process. And then the other thing is the graceful handoff, which is a lot of pushing where we've said, all right, we're going to go ahead and put that into their email or their system, tell the customer we have, but also let them know that had to transition, so there's nothing more we can do about it, but at least we try to give them that gracious transition.
Yeah, and I think I'll the risk of being a little bit more late afternoon aggressive on this, world as it is and world as it ought to be. I think world as it is right now, making sure we do the education well and they understand the context. World as it ought to be, they don't care what the jurisdiction is at all. So I think to Rob's point, I think now that we're feeling that the system is hitting the ilities, it's more stability, more reliability, scalability. We really do think that figuring out what the priority ones that are crossing jurisdictions a lot, not in the 2.0, maybe not in the 3.0, but I do think sooner rather than later, we'd like to trial out things like graffiti or other things like that cross lots of jurisdictions. You should just be able to report it. It should go into a single system and it should pop back without knowing whether it's Caltrain or Caltrans or county or city. And so that's aspirational, but that's where we want to get to. And we've made some nice pokes, and we'll keep going, moving it up the food chain until we start to get the responses that we need.
No, that would be ideal. I just want to jump in on this conversation too. I mean, I guess the bottom line is setting expectations. And so when they come to us with a request that it's Caltrans or the county or another agency, it's out of our control in terms of being able to address the problem. We can reach out to them, we can bug them, but we can't directly control that. And so I think there's a lot of frustration for our residents because how do we set their expectations? So I guess there might be some middle ground here in terms of having some language that would set expectations without having the resident feel like they're not welcome to input their feedback or complaints into our system. So I don't have the answer to that, but that's kind of where we want to go.
I've actually had
Exactly.
some really enlightening conversations with some of our residents about their experience with exactly this point of friction in the process. And I think what I'd propose is that we have to do what we say we're going to do, which is prototypes what some different responses would be and put those in front of some of our power users who do this and our casual users, and see whether there's some right language that strikes the right balance between educating them and setting expectations while also showing them that we actually really care, and that just because it's not in our jurisdiction doesn't mean that we don't care that there's like a sofa, and a bunch of garbage like on the street corner by their school. So we have to strike that balance, and I think testing that with customers and using them as a resource for us to find the best solution is going to give us a path forward.
Great. And then just one comment. I like in your report where you state that you're focused on doing a few things well and just continue that strategy. Let's nail down a few things, do them well, and then expand. But don't try to expand too quickly, because we know what happens. So thank you for that report. Can I get a motion to accept both D3 and D4?
So moved.
Been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All right. So last item on the agenda is D5, Development Services Process Improvements Update.
So this last presentation really is about our partnership with Development Services, and I think demonstrates the power in practice of our 3 innovation behaviors: championing the customer, learning from data, and iterating to improve on some of the most complex and important services in our organization. So I will allow, is it Rosalind, are you kicking it off? I think Rosalind Huey, our Director of Planning, Building, and Code Enforcement, will lead us off through this presentation.
Thank you, Kip. Today we're providing an update on the partnership between the Development Services partners and the City Manager's Innovation Team. We kicked off this partnership about 6 months ago with 2 desired outcomes. First, to measurably improve the customer experience related to service alignment among all Development Services partners, which includes planning, building, fire, and public works. And then secondly, we wanted to build staff capabilities in designing and implementing process improvements. Our approach was guided by the city's 3 core innovation principles, which are champion the customer, learn through data, and iterate to improve. These are behaviors we seek to embed as organizational habits that will enable us to continuously improve on our services for our residents and businesses. This timeline provides the big picture of the process. Last November, we assembled a team of 9 staff from planning, building, fire, public works, and transportation. The first step was to discover the biggest pain points in the process, which the team accomplished by interviewing 10 business owners and consultants and mapping their customer journeys. Next, they brainstormed dozens of possible solutions and tested prototypes with another 10 customers, which led to recommendations of 2 pilot solutions. Since late January, the teams have been developing and testing the pilot solutions. And I also want to highlight that a big part of this partnership is engaging our insight expertise based on the belief that our own staff have the insight and the ability to improve our processes if we empower them to actually do so. So with that in mind, the project started off by giving city staff the opportunity to see their services in a new light. For a typical city staff person, their experience is often primarily in knowing the city's policies and regulations and implementing them through a process. Delivering that information to a customer is a relatively smaller part of the staff person's experience. However, we see for our customers, their perspective is actually reversed. The biggest part of their experience are the many interactions they have with the city over time, whether that's on the website, in the permit center, via a comment letter, or in an actual project meeting. All of these interactions add up to the overall experience. So one of our goals in this project was to help city staff get time to step out of their day-to-day roles to see their services from our customers' eyes. And now I'm going to turn it over to Brad Fox, one of our team members.
Thank you, Rosalind. Thank you, Rosalind. Brad Fox, Senior Engineer with Fire Department. So here's a photo of myself and a few colleagues interviewing a consultant who helps many restaurants downtown. While we interact with customers on a daily basis, reviewing projects, it was tangibly different for us to have the space to connect with customers and understand our process from their perspective. Over the course of 20 interviews with small business owners and consultants, we heard that entrepreneurs come to City Hall with big dreams, but get overwhelmed by complex city requirements. As indicated by this wall in the permit center, we've got a whole lot of information for our customers, but it can be hard to navigate. Lack of clarity costs business owners time and money. Based on what we heard, we came up with a solution called Upfront Info. It's envisioned as an online tool that provides basic information for small business owners to easily determine if a use is allowed at a site, what types of permits would be required, or what departments they would need to talk to, length of the review, and permit costs. During the Problem and Solutions Discovery Workshop, many customers indicated the difficulty in finding this important information. Here's the first prototype, which was created in 10 minutes with paper and marker. We then showed it to over 10 business owners and consultants who validated the need for a tool that would provide easy access to information. The next thing we needed to figure out was whether it was even possible to distill the city's requirements into a predictable series of steps. So over the course of multiple weeks, we developed a flowchart based on input from all PBCE partners. We tested and refined the flowchart with customers who gave us positive feedback on the usefulness of the flowchart. Finally, we're now testing a visual mock-up of what the web tool would look like. Like with the previous prototypes, the goal is to continue to validate whether this would be a useful tool to business owners before we invest more time and money in building out a real tool. With that in mind, we've identified 3 key metrics that we're testing with customers. Every customer we test the tool with is asked to answer these 3 questions so that we can determine whether the tool is valuable. Ultimately, our goal is to reduce the time our customers spend researching requirements before they even submit an application. Now I'll hand it back over to Michelle to discuss the other pilot solution.
So in those same interviews that Brad described earlier, another major pain point that came up for the consultants and business owners that we talked to was that conflicting feedback and multiple rounds of review were also very costly in terms of time and money. So the team came up with a proposed solution, which we're now prototyping, called Power Teams. The concept is that it's a cross-disciplinary team of reviewers that collaborates throughout the permitting process and has shared ownership for getting the projects through the process. The idea is that by organizing themselves in a way that promotes sort of more intense alignment and communication than in the current structure, the Power Team will be able to identify and solve problems early, eliminate conflicting feedback, and provide end-to-end consistency for the applicants. And this concept is partly inspired by the success of existing building programs, such as special tenant improvements, Commercial Express, and the streamlined restaurant program. So true to our intent to learn by doing, our first step was to assemble a Power Team of reviewers from planning, environmental review, building, public works, fire, and DOT, transportation. The team set up regular working sessions multiple times a week when they review projects while in the same physical space, which lowers the barrier for them to have informal conversations and check-ins with each other, basically a higher bandwidth for information sharing. We also have a hypothesis that the power team's arrangement will be more efficient for communication because in a typical entitlement process for the planning project manager has a unique team for every project she works on, which could be up to 30 or 60 even different configurations of experts from across the disciplines for each project. So in contrast with power teams, by sharing a number of projects with the same group of people, we would expect to see efficiencies in the number of people that that project manager has to coordinate with. So to test these hypotheses, the team is working on 7 real projects that are in various stages of the entitlement process, and they've also identified initial metrics for measuring success for this phase.
I just want to jump in for just a second on that last one, just because if you really catch the subtlety of this, it's pretty amazing. So imagine if you're a project manager and you've got a stack of 15 folders on your desk and 15 different projects. Current configuration, you might actually have 15 different teams effectively that you'd have to coordinate with. So to get feedback on all 15 of them, you might either have to get a huge number of people into a single meeting, or you might have to have 15 different meetings. When the power team configuration, those same 15 files, the same group of people would be collectively responsible for them. And not only does that cut down on meetings, but for the first ever time, they really think of themselves as a team. So I just want to, and what I love about this is this was a discovery that was made by the people doing the work themselves.
Thanks, Kip. So here are the initial metrics that the team has identified, and these are associated with what they're currently looking at as typical projects, which are commercial projects that come in of a relatively limited scope. So site development permits or conditional use permits, roughly less than 35,000 square feet. And so those 3 metrics are the end-to-end time for the entitlement process, number of days between first submittal and approval. Secondly, the number of days between first submittal and full comments from all departments. And this is something that is currently being measured for all planning projects. And then most notably, the third metric, which is the % of applications ready for hearing after second submittal. So that means that the team is really taking responsibility for helping the customer get to be ready as soon as possible. There are a lot of factors that go into whether an application is going to be ready by the second submittal, which could include that the applicant themselves has decided to make changes. But this is really showing that the team wants to help those customers be successful and reduce the multiple rounds of review. So we actually presented these metrics exactly 2 weeks ago, and there was a lot of interest in sort of knowing, well, what is the baseline? And actually in the last 2 weeks, the team has gone and extracted some initial baseline metrics based on 13 site development permits of projects between 3,000 and 30,000 square feet. And so this is our initial baseline. So the number of days between first submittal and approval for these types of projects is on average 7 months, with a minimum of 1.5 months and a maximum of 15 months, based on these 13 projects in the baseline group. The number of days between first submittal and full comments for all departments is much tighter. It ranges from 15 days to 35 days, with an average of 28 days. And then for the final metric, which is the percentage of applications that are ready for hearing after second submittal, based on this baseline set, it's 23%, or 3 of those 13 applications. So the other 9 applications went through 3 or possibly more rounds of review. As the team progresses with the projects that they're working on, we're going to be comparing, they'll be comparing their own performance to these baseline metrics to see if their process is getting better results, and then tweaking their process accordingly. So I'm going to close up by speaking a little bit about our lessons learned so far and our next steps. The key lessons have been that testing early prototypes with customers yields valuable feedback, even though, it is a little bit uncomfortable for us to invite real customers in and show them something that's not quite ready. But then once we let them into that space, we can co-create together. Secondly, improving the customer experience requires deep collaboration across our divisions, like our organizational structure, because no one development services partner is responsible for the entirety of the customer experience. It's all of us, and so we all need to be aligned in order to make progress. And thirdly, making time for this work has been a challenge. Our staff are all working very hard on their day-to-day responsibilities of reviewing projects, and they're taking on this additional process improvement work on top of that. In terms of our next steps, as I mentioned, we'll be comparing the pilot performance to baseline metrics, continuing to test and refine both pilots, and then developing recommendations for the next phase of work, whether we'll continue doing more refinements, take a pause, or scale to more projects or more teams or towards implementation. So finally, to close, I want to applaud the openness of our partners in development services for being willing to try new approaches, because this partnership has really been about creating a space for experimentation. Thank you.
And with that, we'll take any questions that the committee might have.
Okay, Councilmember Davis. Yep. Questions? Well, I want to thank you for all the hard work. I know this has been a journey that still has a ways to go, but we've made a lot of progress. And I guess that the bottom line is, particularly for our business customers and our developers, can they have a efficient, streamlined process that they can get in, get their plans evaluated, get their approvals, and be able to open up their businesses. And we hear a lot of feedback in terms of frustrations, and I'm glad that we're trying to solve that issue and move forward with this strategy. So thank you for all your hard work. And on that, I will request a motion to accept the report. So moved. It's been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All right. Blair left. No. All right, so motion's approved. So on that, meeting's adjourned.